Well, first am I, good afternoon. How are you? It's Beth sitting in for Andy today. He'll be back tomorrow. Chris Quirk on the phones, and we would love to talk to you this afternoon about anything at all that's on your mind. 66 13 68 is the number. Some of the things in the news, well, we've been hearing this morning about an immediate ban on live imports of cattle, goats and sheep to the Isle of Man. It's after cases of blue tongue have been found in the UK. What about parking? Thinking specifically about Onchan, the commissioners there running a consultation about some proposed restrictions. And would you like to see a referendum on the issue of the bishop in Tynwald? That was a suggestion by a listener yesterday. All that and much more, perhaps something else completely on your mind. We'd love to hear from you, as I say. 66 13 68 is the number to call. You can text us 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com, and we're on WhatsApp as well. Just use 07624 166 177. Straight to the lines now. And Howard, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Beth. It's one of these things that's going to roll on forever. It's the building of the new, what they say, sea wall.
Oh, yes.
From just past the War Memorial up to the Empress. Now, that area is generally, part of the Broadway area is access for the Coast Guard. I've seen them on the shore occasionally, and if anybody gets in trouble down there, that's got to have access. But what crossed my mind, the problem lies from the War Memorial going through to beyond the Empress. Now, the sea terminal end up the shore, the beach as we call it, has always been relatively clear and had a deep sea wall. And the same thing works for the Summer Hill end. It's always been stone that end. And I was just wondering, if they put this wall up and invariably the stone is going to build up against it, is that stone going to be swept along gradually? It's not going to be overnight, but gradually move along, which it will. Will it eventually get to the point where they have to put another 500 metres of wall from the Empress to the next patch, say over to the bottom of one of the drives or something like that? And as this keeps going on, and that's all they seem to think about, let's have another look at the computer, put a line there, build a wall, and that will fix it. But as I've said quite a few times, I've seen them down there with the digging the sand out, and that was a facetious remark that, and they're using it all the time, of both the Minister for DOI and Chris Thomas, where they're saying that they have to have a sloping beach to slow the speed of the waves coming in. Now, that wall that was down there was originally designed for exactly that, and the stone is a residual after action of the sea, and it's a lack of maintenance, and the water will roll around the bay as it always has done, and it will build up on the back of the new wall and gradually move the stone sideways, either left or right if you're looking inland, and it'll move it along the promenade until such times it's coming up on another part of the promenade. So why, as a number of people have suggested, and the DOI and the powers to be are totally ignoring, remove that stone, because I know there's 2, probably 3 crushing plants on the island here. I'm not sure there's one out of Middle Farm, but anyway, there's 3 here, and that stone could be utilised. It's not a road grade stone for surfacing, because that either gets imported or it comes from Poortown Quarry. And I remember years ago they stopped using rough stone from Poortown Quarry because of a finite amount that's there left. But that could be used for road-based crushed. And they've been using it for donkey's years, taking it from the north of the island down from Wrights. So it must be perfectly all right, or they wouldn't be using it.
All right, Howard, some interesting points there. Obviously, some things that we'd need to put to the DOI. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this at all, but we have a really interesting article on manxradio.com. Lewis Foster, our reporter down in the newsroom, did an in-depth report into the seawall, the history of it, and the proposed changes. That'd be interesting to take a look at. But Howard, thank you so much.
Well, I heard that last night, and as you say, it's on the newscast or whatever it is, Lewis Foster.
Yeah.
And I listened to it last night. It's very interesting, and some of the points he brings up are relevant today because, as Charles Gard said, it's 12 years since the groins went, and the problem seems to be after that. There always was stone there, but it seems to be exaggerated now, and the stone, as far as the DOI are concerned and politicians, it's needed as sloping beach to dissipate the wave power. Now that's utter rubbish.
All right, Howard.
So let them have a second thought about it and it'd invariably be over £1 million by the time they're finished. But they could take that stone out, use it, and sell it.
OK, we'll put it to them, Howard. Thank you so much indeed. Lovely to talk to you as ever. Let's go to line 2 now, and we can join Carol. Good afternoon, Carol.
Good afternoon, Beth. How are you, my dear?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Well, I'm steaming, to be quite honest.
Tell us all about it.
Well, I just think it's sneaky. I could think of stronger words, but I think it's sneaky for Mr. Hooper or any other MHK, for that matter of fact, to try and oust the bishop from Tynwald when at the moment the diocese is in interregnum and we don't have a bishop. In other words, he's not there to defend the role.
So I think what we're talking about, Carol, is the constitutional bill, which has gone for its first reading in the House of Keys. We should say this is not about the bishop having a presence in Tynwald. This is about the bishop having a vote. Having
a vote, yes. And it could then be argued that if he hasn't got a vote, that lessens the reason for him to be there at all. Although obviously he would be there, he or she, we don't know who we're getting next, would at least be there to put a Christian point of view. But the thing is, I just think it's very sneaky to be trying to alter anything to do with the bishop's role in Tynwald when there isn't a bishop there to answer and to fight his corner or her corner, as it were.
So I hear what you're saying there, Carol. What about the people who feel that talking about a Christian point of view is not necessarily relevant to them? And in this day and age, perhaps it's not the thing that they want to see happen in our parliament.
Well, no. I mean, it's a multicultural society. It gets more and more multicultural as the years go by. But at the moment, unless I'm wrong, and I stand to be corrected, I think we are actually labelled as a Christian country. And so, I have no objection to any other religion being represented in the Tynwald, to be quite honest. But as long as we're supposed to be a Christian country, even though a lot of people these days, when you fill in forms and it says religion, I know that the greater majority, well, I suspect that the greater majority these days just leave that blank unless they are, strongly involved in whatever their religion happens to be. I am a Christian, as you might have guessed. And so, this just goes to my heart that this is happening when there isn't a representative of the Christian church or any other church, I get that, in Tynwald to fight that particular corner.
And just finally, Carol, somebody suggested yesterday that there should be a referendum on this issue and the people of the Isle of Man should have their say. What would you say to that?
I think that's a very good idea. I just hope that it doesn't get overcome by apathy. But I think it's a good idea.
All right, Carol, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Okay, Beth.
Take care.
Okay, darling. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That's Carol there suggesting that Laurie Hooper is being a little bit sneaky about bringing up the issue of the bishop while we don't actually have a bishop in position. What do you think about that? 166 177 if you'd like to text. You can email studio@manxradio.com, or even better, come and have a chat. We're not scary here. Chris Quirk waiting to have a little talk with you first of all, and you can talk about anything you like between now and 1pm. Just want to bring up something that was raised yesterday. We were asked why the Steam Packet wasn't applying for a gaming licence for the Ben McCree. This person had seen notices in the paper for the Manxman and the Mannin. Just to let you know, I have asked the question of the Steam Packet. I haven't heard back yet, but I will keep you posted. So as soon as we hear anything, we'll bring that info to you.
The Mannin Line with Beth Espey.
It is coming up to 12:20. Lovely to have your company this afternoon. It's Beth sitting in for Andy just for today. He will be back tomorrow. So keep your thoughts coming in on anything you like this afternoon. Bob has messaged to say, please can we keep the bishop? I'm not religious, but I don't trust that politicians can make ethical or moral decisions without guidance. Maybe a professor of ethics would be a better replacement, but we haven't yet got any other alternatives. This is a fact, says Colin. More people go to the pub on a Sunday than go to a church, so perhaps we should have a pub landlord as well as a bishop voting in Tynwald. I don't think so, he says. That was Colin's thoughts, not mine. And Steve says, we are a secular society. The only people who say we are a Christian society are practicing Christians who represent a minority of the people on this island. They do not need to be involved in government decisions and should certainly have no input on important decisions affecting other people, such as assisted dying. Well, we can go to the lines and join David Quirk again. And David, once again, talking about the bishop.
Yes, I just wanted to add a little bit of flavour to it as well. When you become a politician, you sign a thing of oath. In my time, it was allegiance to the Queen and her descendants, and now it's the King. So isn't that part of being loyal to somebody who's in a religious order in the UK? And I'm just going to say that regarding the issue regarding the bishop there, I don't think one of the politicians in their manifestos, I've not looked at all of them, but I do support Carol on this particular issue. I don't go to church as much as I should do, and I'm involved on a Sunday to do with football and things like that. But people make a choice, don't they? And the choice was made to put those politicians in on their policies that they were putting together in their manifestos. And I don't remember anybody, I don't think so anyway, regarding to remove the bishop or his vote. Because what's the point of having somebody there who doesn't vote on an issue but probably can contribute to a debate, sometimes change a debate, or give a guidance or a moral issue on a debate? The only thing I had against the last bishop was he was a Liverpool supporter. And that's the only thing I had against him.
But it's interesting, David, you know, as I think we mentioned yesterday, times do change, people's opinions on things change, and actually maybe it's the public that needs to be heard on this rather than the politicians.
Well, I listened to the end of a debate with Mr. Cannon, the Chief Minister, and Mr. Thomas, the former Minister for the DOI, and I just wondered, in certain politicians at the minute, what are they up to with each other where, they're digging holes for the Isle of Man. They're not supporting the Isle of Man's progression and going forward. All they're doing is trying to score points with each other across the table. And I do feel frustrated for the Chief Minister. I'm not talking on his behalf there. But he wants to progress things like everybody does on the island. We want employment here. We want to encourage people there. But if I was listening far and wide and I was listening to the Manx Parliament, which is the biggest part of what's going to happen in the future, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of other people is, when you listen to that, the two questions you'd ask is, what's going on over there, and what are they doing, and would I want to relocate to the Isle of Man? I think the answer would be no.
David Quirk, nobody would accuse you of point scoring when you were an MHK then?
Well, you do things, don't you? And I've no qualms about what I did. I supported the government when it needed to be supported. We encouraged them when Tony Brown was in there, just giving you to take over the bowl and create a national stadium for the future. Look at that now. There's other things we've done at the college. There's lots of other things, and there was whinges at that same time as well. But I think they've all been proven wrong.
All right, David, lovely to talk to you as ever. Thank you very much indeed. That was David Quirk there. We can go to line 2 now and join Ros. I think Ros is there, all being well. Ooh, not sure we can get Ros yet. Just give me a second. Oh, I think Ros, are you there now?
Yes, I am.
Hello.
Hello. The only thing I've got to say about the bishop is you can't stand for the keys until you've been resident on the island. I think it's for 3 years. So why should a bishop be able to come in and vote immediately?
That's an interesting point, Ros. So what's your...
I think they should have to have the same residential qualifications before they can vote as the general public have.
So would you be happy then, Ros, once a bishop is appointed, to see them take their seat and overview things, but not have a vote for a time then?
Yes.
That's a really interesting point.
They can sit in the keys, see how everything works, but they shouldn't be allowed to vote until they've got the correct residential qualifications.
OK, and would you be up for having a referendum on this issue, Ros, if it was available to you?
Yes.
And what way would you vote, do you think? Would you be able to tell us?
Well, if what I've just suggested was included in the referendum, I would say yes, keep the bishop, but he has to do 3 years before he can vote. If they were going to say he could vote straight away, then I would vote no for the bishop.
All right, Ros. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you. Really interesting point.
OK, bye.
Thank you. That was Ros there talking about the bishop. That is an interesting point, actually, thinking about the residency and maybe people getting used to the Isle of Man and the ways over here before they have a direct say in any of the legislation. Let's just hear about something that broke this morning. This is the immediate ban on the importation of livestock on the Isle of Man. And apparently, according to the Manx National Farmers Union, this has not caused any undue pressure on the industry. And in fact, it's a move that has been welcomed. Sarah Comish says the union is in support of the ban. It's been brought in by DEFA because of cases of blue tongue that have been found in the UK, 5 cases at the weekend. And this is a viral illness that can reduce milk production and cause infertility in some farm animals. It does not, though, affect humans or food safety. Let's hear from Sarah Comish.
Have you been invited to take part in the Household Income and Expenditure Survey? It's one of the most important surveys for our island because the information you provide is vital data for our island's financial planning. It helps us calculate our VAT revenue from the UK. Plus, it gives us a better understanding of the financial strains on residents, so we can support those who are struggling. If you've been invited, please take part. Visit gov.im/HIES for more information.
So that wasn't Sarah Comish. This is, though.
It shouldn't have too much of a negative impact on the industry on the Isle of Man. Outbreaks of blue tongue, they seem to be quite under control at the moment down in Canterbury, but it's obviously a very debilitating disease. It can have some very damaging effects on livestock and on a farm business as well. And for welfare reasons, it's something that we definitely don't want to get on island. The status we've got on island at the moment, we are TB and BVD free, which is something we should be very proud of. And that's as a result of the department's animal health team and the industry working together. It is one advantage of being on an island that we can respond this quickly to something like this.
And that response, as quick as it is, do you welcome it?
Absolutely. I think the whole industry would support this decision and be glad that the department has responded so quickly. Certainly, it gives us all a little bit of time to work out what could be done next so that when imports are required, we have something in place to prevent the disease getting to the island.
And have any members contacted the union yet? Are there any fears or anything going around?
No, I think that we had a short discussion on it last night, and I think everybody feels fairly confident that the department are doing the right thing.
Will anyone be affected, cost-wise, or could we perhaps have any shortages in the weeks to come?
No, I think we have the livestock that we've got on island shouldn't be affected by what is hopefully a temporary ban on imports. As we go on further into next year, we would hope to potentially have in place some pre-import testing system to enable imports as and when they're needed. But certainly for this time of year, it's not caused any undue pressure on the industry that we're aware of. I think obviously we consider the farmers that are down in Canterbury that are experiencing this situation, and we understand that it's going to have quite an impact on them.
That is Sarah Comish, who's the General Secretary of the Manx National Farmers Union, just talking about that ban on the importation of livestock to the Isle of Man. It's goats, cattle and sheep because of blue tongue. You can find out more details at manxradio.com. All right, some of your texts and emails now. Mike at the Welbeck, good afternoon to you. How much would a referendum cost? This is in relation to the suggestion that we should perhaps have a referendum on the issue of whether the bishop should have a vote in Tynwald or whether the bishop should have a place in Tynwald and the Legislative Council. Mike says, theoretically, it sounds like a good idea on many subjects, but as Andy points out, we don't even have a mechanism for it anyway. I bet it would set us all back a fortune. Why should a religious figure have a seat? What official qualifications do they have? Can I just call up Willy Wonka and ask him to sit on the seat? That is texter ending 232. Now, here's some skeet from Frank. This has not been substantiated, but I will ask the question, Frank. I overheard a conversation at the weekend, a local MHK telling his group of friends as he was sat in 1886 that the Ben Macree had been sold to a Scottish company and it's not being made public as it's only been sold for a certain amount. I don't know if there's any truth in that, Frank. We can ask the question. I should say that was Frank overhearing that one. Another Frank now says, I've noticed 3 to 4 small trees laying across footpaths and the weeds and grass overtaking the new gravel path that was laid less than a year ago. Shame it wasn't finished correctly with a top coat of asphalt. Not sure what you're talking about there, Frank, so if you let us know where you were talking about. Texter ending 039, the bishop could be replaced with a confirmation vote by the people, so any law passed by Tynwald is accepted or rejected by the people in a national vote. Do you think anything ever would get done? I don't know. What do you think about that? And here's an email from Manx Will, who says, there's a great deal of concern with all people I speak to with regards to the way our island is being run. We're tired of schemes set up by government who are turning this island into a mess, a tourist disaster, no common sense in them. They can't even be bothered to stand up for the human rights of the people, which is under threat from WHO. Ask the public how much carbon footprints do they think a war creates. So much war going on, it's a total waste of time. The little Isle of Man has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Adding any carbon footprint to the side of our world, our lives, let the people work that one out for themselves. And Max Will says Barclays branch closing is just another blow to human face-to-face services. I'm surprised why people don't seem bothered about our future as the pandemic treat is being ignored and people being blinkered or distracted by all the wars so much that we can't see what is going on in front of our eyes. 66 13 68 is the number to call if you want to have a chat about anything on air. You've got until around 1 p.m. James says there is a referendum act to cover calling one. And there's a message here from Sue to say the bishop isn't usually Manx, so not only is one religion favoured, but he or she also doesn't have enough background, historical knowledge of local viewpoints to make an informed vote. Also, if they're busy swatting up on politics, how do they find time to do the job that they're paid for? Something has to be neglected. Sue says, I am shocked at people suggesting that people need religion to be ethical, considering some of the track records. Any thoughts on what you've been hearing there? 12:32 now.
This is the Isle of Man talking, the Mannin Line.
It is 12:33. Beth looking after things today with Chris on the phones. Lovely to talk to you. Let's go to the lines now and join Gary. Good afternoon, Gary.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon. Yeah, it's just regarding the steam packet vessel leaving this morning to Heysham.
Okay.
Yes, it did leave late, which is fair enough. It's got lots of options about going. The other 3 things were there was no drinking water on the boat. You couldn't drink from anywhere. You weren't allowed to buy hot drinks because of the water. I think that was it, really. And I'm thinking, well, come on, something's really wrong with this boat.
Okay.
It should be looked into.
Were you told, Gary, what the reason behind having no water was?
No, the captain, I'm on the island, I'm flying away this afternoon. I had family and friends on the boat this morning, and they phoned us to tell us what had just gone on. The captain come on and just said, you can wash your hands, but please don't drink. There's no hot drinks, no drinking the waters or anything. And the captain just said that and didn't explain anything.
Okay.
And that's...
Well, once again, we will get in touch with the steam packet and see if, there was a specific issue. I guess, that would sound perhaps like something that's beyond their control, and there's not a lot you can do about it when you've got a boat full of passengers.
Well, this is the second time they've had drinking water problems since we've had it come online.
And were the people on the boat impressed apart from that, Gary?
Well, everybody seems to be impressed with how it looks, but not the way it performs.
Okay. All right, Gary.
But if you could ask that question, I know, because we don't get any answers, and I've checked all the newses and stuff like that. Nothing ever comes up. It all gets hushed. So if you could ask the question, I'd be grateful.
Of course, we'll ask that. And to be fair, they are normally pretty good at coming back to us. So we will ask the question and see what we can find out. Thank you so much.
Cheers now.
All right, take care. That was Gary.
Bye.
Talking about some people who were on the Manxman sailing this morning. Is it possible to find out if a decision of our government was by only one vote and the Bishop's vote was included in the votes for? That is from Pete. So if you have ever been into the Tynwald chambers, they do have screens up and that breaks down the vote. It used to be in the olden days when I used to be in there with David Collister. We used to have great fun in there. We used to have a thing where they'd call divide and then the names would be written down and we'd try and scribble them down as well. So you can work out who's voted for what, Pete. So I think if that's a question that you were looking for there. Texter ending 653 said, according to the last census, only 54% of people claim to be Christian. Not sure you can still claim the island is a Christian nation anymore. Time to move on from religion in politics and modernise. Thank you very much indeed for that. Absolutely no vote for the Bishop. Waste of time and money for a referendum. The Bishop is not elected. No place in politics for religion. That is from Pompey Pete. Roger says, interesting that the MHKs don't have a mandate to remove the vote of the Bishop. They also don't have a mandate to bring forward the assisted dying bill. I checked their manifestos, especially the mover of the private members bill. That was from Roger. We didn't get a referendum on the island's development plan. We didn't get a referendum on the plan to increase the population to 100,000. So there is no chance we'd get a referendum on the Bishop. That is from Mark. I suppose, though, the problem would be if we had a referendum on every single subject, you just wouldn't get anything done, would you? Leave that one there. If Tynwald decides they aren't interested in the billions of pounds of gas revenue as they appear to be standing in the way as much as they can, in particular those who live nowhere near us in Maccled. So I'm thinking of forming Maccled Land as a sensible folk of the nearly north up here could be millionaires overnight if we keep it to ourselves. This is from Dick. We'll let Ramsey and parts of Laxey share in the spoils from Kroger, plus the millions from the licences for our seabed for wind turbines. But I'm not sure, says Dick, about letting Baldryan have any of the money. And we've certainly got no need for drilling for geothermal, as we've got enough hot air to run a turbine or two from some of the commissioners. So get in quick before there is nothing left going. It's going to be a rush to move up here. And that is tongue-in-cheek as ever from Dick. Thank you very much indeed. Regardless of the Bishop issue, I'd welcome a referendum on the ridiculous number of MLCs and MHKs. This is texter ending 003. In order to reduce their numbers, this would save in salaries and we may get some decisions made. Frank has been back in touch. He was talking about the weeds and the trees overgrowing. It was a footpath on Groudle Road that Frank says is overgrown. Thank you so much for getting back in touch with us with that. Surely the conversation here is, says texter ending 225, it's Sarah in Ballaugh. Surely the conversation here is, should religion have a place in politics? And if so, are all religions being represented? Personally, I don't think religion should have anything to do with politics. That seems to be quite a popular view here. There is a message from Mark. Mark, I will reply to you after the programme and let you know about that. A texter from number ending 223 says there has been no hot or cold drinks on the boat for the past 3 days. And somebody else ending 192 says, my niece was on the Manxman on Sunday. No hot drinks then either. Couldn't even wash her hands. So say we will ask the steam packet about this if there is a specific issue. The Manxman is having problems, says Paul, with the sanitary system. That was according to the captain on yesterday's sailing. Tony C wants to know how you can have no religion in government. You would only have to elect atheists. I think Tony sent this message in yesterday because Tony says everyone has their own beliefs and everybody is impacted and influenced by them. Okay, studio@manxradio.com, 166 177 if you want to text. Still got some time, quarter of an hour or so if you'd like to get in touch and chat about anything you like at all. Let's just hear about something that came up in the House of Keys today, and that is the fact that more than 1,500 secondary school students were formally suspended in the 2022-23 school year. The Education Minister, Julie Edge, revealed those figures in the Keys this morning. She was facing questions from Douglas North member David Ashford and Douglas Central's MHK, Anne Corlett.
Across our 32 primary schools in the academic year 22-23, approximately 58 children have been formally suspended and 114 have been informally suspended from school. Across our 5 secondary schools in the academic year 22-23, approximately 1,505 children have been formally suspended and 950 have been informally suspended from school.
Would the Minister agree with me that those figures are absolutely horrendous when you consider the actual size of our school population?
Certainly, obviously it is something that would always be looked into, but I do believe that these are possibly sessions rather than individual children, so there could be 100 children suspended a number of sessions, but I will clarify that and come back to the Honourable Member on that.
Can I just ask the Minister to explain to us what is the difference between a formal suspension and an informal suspension?
A formal suspension would be obviously the severity of the incident. So the sessions, for a suspension for a full day, it would be classed as 2 sessions on our registers. So obviously it's morning registration, afternoon registration. So that would be 2 sessions, and obviously that is down to the severity. An informal suspension, when a student is sent home, depending on the situation and what has happened, some of our students will be sent home to cool off. Teachers will have that professional conversation with the young individual, and it's then classed as an informal suspension, and they might just be sent home for part of the day with regards to that, whereas a formal suspension does have that specified timescale, so they'd be sent home and it'd be a 1-day, 2-day suspension. But cooling off is certainly utilised at secondary level to give students that opportunity to reflect and come back into school the following day, and hopefully it's picked up from there.
That is the Education Minister, Julie Edge. She was speaking in the House of Keys this morning in response to some questions from David Ashford and Anne Corlett, talking about the number of secondary school students who were formally suspended in the past academic year. Gaz has been in touch about that. I believe, he says, there are around 5,200 secondary school children on the Isle of Man. Ms Edge has indicated there have been 2,400 suspensions in one way or the other. I'm not sure if those figures are entirely correct. I think we've had about 1,500 there. But Gaz says, what a sad indictment of today's society and a reflection on teacher demands for more pay. It is an interesting one, and you wonder, what is behind this behaviour, I guess. It's not been an easy time, I think it's fair to say, for children, certainly not just here on the Isle of Man, but sort of globally over the past few years. Does that impact on behaviour? Do the lasting effects of that, I don't know, play out? Numbers of children in classes, I don't know. Is it a societal thing? Is that just the way that society goes? Have we always said this about this generation of children, that their behaviour is never as good as the last generation? Of course, my generation was absolutely fantastic. There is a message here from Robbie who says, whose idea was it to build this wall along the promenade? Will we ever find out? From listening to people, they don't agree with this and everyone thinks it's better to remove stones and reuse them. Thank you very much indeed, Robbie. A message from texter 223. There's a painter who lives on the Groudle Road who regularly sprays the weeds up and around his property. And Fred says, here's a good question for Manx Radio listeners. Can I ask what qualifications all the MHKs have? Now, does that really matter, do you think? Do we want a certain level of qualification, or do we want a broad section of people who represent most facets of society? I don't know. What do you think's better? 166 177. If you want to text, you can email studio@manxradio.com. We've still got 10 minutes or so if you'd like to have a quick chat on air. Mark says it's all well and good saying nothing would get done if we had referendums on everything, but what is the point in doing things if the public don't want them done? I suppose that's why, hopefully, you have conversations with your MHKs and see where they stand on certain views and make sure they're representing your views. How many of your MHKs have been round to see you or been in touch with you since the last election? That'd be an interesting one. And there is a message here on WhatsApp. And this is regarding the objections to the bishop's vote and Christianity in politics more broadly. This person, I think it's Helen, says, I'd encourage anyone who's against to go to a church near them and see if they think it matches what they see. I accept many people have been hurt by so-called Christians and gently suggest the church is not best represented by top tiers of management. The church is the people making the tea, running the food bank, visiting people in prison, hospital and residential homes for the elderly, quietly fundraising for local charities, sending Christmas presents to families in Eastern Europe and so on. The bishop is necessarily literate in philosophy, theology, history, ethics and human nature. He is able, or she is able, to think about issues which affect the public in a balanced way. Be careful, says Helen, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. OK, let's hear about something else now. And we know that the weather has been pretty awful over the past few weeks, but we have, before the cold spell, had an excessive share of rain. And while that's pretty inconvenient, possibly, for you and I, Manx farmers have had to deal with whatever the heavens throw at them. And then they are relied on by local people to buy what they produce. So this year we had a long dry period followed by lots of rain, and that makes it really tough to produce the cabbages, turnips, or moots as they're known locally, parsnips, carrots and potatoes that we all expect to see on our plates, and certainly in the run-up to Christmas. But the farmer Stuart Allenson produces all of these up at Derby.
We're fortunate here at Rendu Farm. We have got irrigation, but there's a lot of work and a lot of expense in getting the irrigation up, moving it round. And then, as you say, later on in the season, it got very wet, and that has its own challenges, getting in the fields. The too much wet can cause fungal problems. You know, the root crops in the ground, they don't like it too wet. And even the foliage crops above the ground, it can affect, you know, the leaves of the cabbage with black spots and things like that.
It stayed quite warm for quite a long time, didn't it?
It did, yes. We've had quite a warm season. You know, we were harvesting potatoes very late this year. We were into November before we got the harvest finished. And, you know, that was quite unusual. On two counts. One, we're not normally that late, and two, it's certainly not normally that warm. I've certainly known frosts, you know, for the 26th of October. I think one year we had quite a hard frost. So it has stayed mild for a good while, yes.
And the great thing is to produce this stuff, but the greater thing is to actually be able to sell it on. Do you have a problem in that regard? We've got regular customers who buy from us. Robinsons have supported us for, probably 40 years now. We have a great working relationship with them. They obviously sell into the ShopRite network. The ShopRite network, as you know, you've reported on Manx Radio, has now been sold to Tesco. We are fortunate. We do supply Tesco with some produce, and I'm certainly talking with Tesco and hoping to carry on with these sales with the Tesco once they take over in the ShopRite stores. So at the moment you're still talking with them, you're not absolutely sure of your position? We are supplying produce to the Lake Road store in Douglas. Tesco have told me, you know, they will continue taking similar quantities to what Robinsons have been taking in the ShopRite. So at the moment, hopefully, yes, all's going well. The one thing I always find talking to farmers is that they remain remarkably optimistic. Are you optimistic about the way things are shaping? Are you going to have breakfast, dinner and tea tomorrow? I hope so. Well, I hope likewise, you know, that there's going to be a market for the food. The world population is growing at quite a rate. The distribution of the food within the world is certainly not even, but there is a market there for the food. So, yes, I'm optimistic. We've got a government that's quite supportive of the industry. So, yes, I think there's reason to be optimistic.
Well, that's good news there from farmer Stuart Allenson, who's up in Derby. Incidentally, if you are on Facebook, go to the Manx Radio Facebook page. Some lovely comments on that story, and you can join in as well. The mention of Tesco there, I should say we are trying to get hold of Tesco. We all want to know what the plan is for rolling out the stores across the Isle of Man. We are in contact with them, and fingers crossed, very soon we will be able to speak to them. OK, Ken has been in touch and had also heard that the Ben McCree was no more for the Isle of Man, that it had been sold. But I can tell you we've got a statement from the Steam Packet. This is in relation to the question asked about why there was no gaming licence applied for the Ben. And the Steam Packet tell us the Ben McCree is the backup vessel now, as specified in the Sea Services Agreement. As it's in reserve, there is no requirement for gaming machines to be kept on board, hence no need for a gaming licence. The Ben McCree is to be retained as a backup vessel for the foreseeable future. Any change to its status would require a variation of the Sea Services Agreement. OK, so hopefully that answers the question, and maybe what's been overheard in certain places at the weekend. I have gone back and asked about the water issues that there have been on the Manxman, so hopefully we'll have clarification on that for you very soon. Texter ending 039 says, talking about getting nothing done, please expand, Beth, or are you happy with the Chief Minister telling us what we will expect to get something done? I think that was in relation to the idea that we should perhaps have a referendum on every single issue, and the question about whether or not, can we reasonably do that? Could we have some sort of social media voting? Can we just have a poll for everything maybe? James says there's heavy plant on Laxey Beach today, moving the stones that have accumulated against the promenade wall. Why can't this be tried on Douglas Promenade before spending more than £1 million on a wall there? Now, we've had an email from someone about the need that they see for a zebra crossing in an area of Douglas. I'm just going to read it to you. It says, parents have been asking the Department of Infrastructure to consider a safe crossing by the Power Station bus stop. This area is very busy and it's used as a crossing for access to Pulrose, especially by children. And this correspondent says, I've seen so many children waiting for ages to cross, then give up waiting and just run across the road. There's also a crossing for Pulrose residents for walking to town and to access a Power Station bus stop. Residents want to see a safe crossing, which would also help as a traffic calming measure to slow traffic down in that area. And this person says, I'm sure many people will agree that a safe crossing is needed at this location, and hopefully the Department of Infrastructure may be able to do something. So I have been in touch with the DOI just to see if this is on their radar, and once again we'll bring you any details that we have as soon as we can. Let's go to the lines now and join Derek. Good afternoon, Derek.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Just one comment about referendums.
Okay.
I never remember having a vote or a referendum on the Council of Ministers when it was created. I, for one, was personally totally against it. It's changed the island absolutely, unbelievably, because of the decisions they're able to make now without the full backing of Tynwald. Well, yes, I know, yes. But they do make decisions within the Council of Ministers themselves. And we certainly didn't. And I think that's the most important thing that we should have had a referendum on.
It's interesting, isn't it? So we're talking about back 1986, so we're thinking around, Derek, when it sort of changed from the old board system. I mean, how different was the board system for anyone who wasn't aware of how that worked, from your point of view?
Well, it's more how different the Council of Ministers is, really. I mean, there was a number of boards. I know there probably is a similar sort of situation now, but the Council of Ministers have the overall say in everything, don't they? Mm. And also the question of a block vote, where they're expected to support the Chief Minister, whatever he decides.
But again, I guess, Derek, it goes back to the idea that if you don't have something in place like that, and nothing would get done at all, there'd be no way of pushing things through.
I think it might tie in a little bit with the time that the finance sector was setting up over here and were wanting quick decisions.
All right, Derek. Well, thank you very much. Interesting point. Lovely of you to get in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Sam. Bye-bye.
That was Derek there. So some more of your texts and emails. We've got a couple of minutes left. MHKs need to know the law. Otherwise, how can they check and balance within the separation of powers doctrine that they rule the law? We don't want them colluding with authorities. They are there to ensure no corruption on behalf of the constituents that voted them in. That is from Anne. Texter 134 says, don't the figures on suspension show how ill-disciplined our schools are and what our woke society has created? We can't say no to children or teenagers anymore, and they know it. Of course, it's a good idea to use the stones from Douglas Beach as hardcore for new roads. People in power are just short of common sense. That is according to D&S. Just an observation regarding the number of students quoted today as being suspended, says Ian. You wouldn't have had this nonsense when I was at school. You'd have just ended up getting the slipper. That definitely made you think twice about your behaviour. No doubt the bleeding heart Liberals will think I'm a dinosaur, but it's certainly worth mentioning that behaviour appears to have been better when I was at school. And Malcolm has been in touch to say, we had a 4-hour drive to Heysham on Sunday for the 2 p.m. sailing on Manxman. Looking forward to a nice cup of tea on board, only to discover, in caps, no hot drink available. The captain explained it was a problem with the filtration system. That is from Malcolm. So it seems there is an issue. As I say, we have asked the steam packet about it, so hopefully we will get a response from them about what's going on. And a texter here ending 179 who says, I don't think anyone would suggest a referendum on everything, but on the big issues it would be nice. How can you know where your MHKs stand if he never appears or the issues never appear in their manifestos? I never hear, says Mark, from my Onken MHKs. That might be a conversation for another time, but that brings us to the end of today's programme. If you've missed any of it, or if you'd like to listen back again, who wouldn't? It will shortly be available as a podcast at manxradio.com. Thank you so much to Chris Quirk on the phones, and thank you for all your comments and contributions, especially if you've taken the time to phone. It's always really lovely to talk to you on air. So if you think of anything in the meantime, before Andy's back in the chair tomorrow, you can use our out of hours line. It's 682 631. Just leave a message. If you've got a question, we can ask it, or if you'd like that message played out on the show, that can be done tomorrow. Coming up next, it's Christy D with 1 to 3. So I'm going to leave you with her. Have a great rest of your afternoon.